Okay, so before every single NFL season, no matter the year, the teams that are the heaviest favorites to win the Super Bowl are pretty much always going to be the Super Bowl teams from the year prior, or maybe another team that just acquired a superstar, but that's pretty much it, right? Well, yes, but sometimes there are slight deviations to that tried and true formula. Usually when a team that wasn't supposed to be a contender comes out of nowhere, it happens around week 6 or 7, and they stay there for the rest of the season and earn the league's respect. But from memory, I don't think we've ever seen a team rocket through the power rankings out of nowhere mid-season, then completely plummet down the rankings, and then shoot back up again all in about a 1-month span. But in 2017, that was just about the most normal thing to happen that year, and one of the reasons why we will never see another season like 2017 ever again. So allow me to take you back to almost a decade in the past now, where the NFL was a completely different landscape. The Kansas City Chiefs were Super Bowl contenders under their franchise cornerstones Kareem Hunt and Alex Smith. The Steelers had the Killer Bees in their prime, and the New England Patriots, led by Thomas Edward Patrick Brady Jr., were on top of the world. But questions had begun to emerge as to whether this was finally the end, because all of a sudden, the AFC seemed to be pretty loaded. Like I said, the Steelers and Chiefs were very good, and newcomers like the Jacksonville Jaguars, led by a potentially all-time great defense that had 10 sacks in just week 1, were looking terrifying. And the Raiders actually started out on fire as well, dropping a near 50 piece on the Jets to start out 2-0 for the first time in my life. But then, well, you know how that went. The Patriots were still the Patriots, though, and even with injuries ravaging through New England's roster, it didn't look like it was going to matter. Tom was still Tom, and he would win the MVP that season, and even threw for 450 yards against an NFC contender in the Saints with 3 active receivers on the roster. So it was the Patriots' crown to lose. But over in the NFC, a young quarterback by the name of Carson Wentz had begun to get some attention. The Eagles were still a pretty mid-team by most metrics around week 4, but we'll get back to them later, because the story of the season during the middle weeks of the year was the absolute collapse of the Atlanta Falcons. This was a team that came the closest to winning the Super Bowl without winning it more than maybe any team ever, damn near, and now just a few months later, the team morale was shot, and it was all over after they blew a 27-10 lead versus the goddamn Chargers. Matt Ryan regressed without Kyle Shanahan there to wipe his ass, and the team overall just played like they haven't recovered yet from the game. So yeah, the Falcons were down and out, but to step away from their endless dejection, in their place, underdogs had begun to rise from below, and that truly was the theme of 2017. The Minnesota Vikings, another team that was counted out due to quarterback issues, was now rolling with a 30-year-old Case Keenum, who all of a sudden turned out to look like a franchise guy, and other teams like the Rams, Saints, and aforementioned Eagles were all scratching and clawing to take down the Patriots. But also, in general, 2017 was just a pretty fun year. Some of the games this season were once in a lifetime. Chiefs vs. Raiders on Thursday night was one of my favorite games I've ever been to, and we got so many other classics too, like Cowboys-Packers, as starting from their own 25-yard line, Aaron Rodgers needed exactly a game-winning drive with less than a minute and a half remaining. Oh wait, wrong game. And because he's Aaron Rodgers, he ended up ripping the Cowboys' heart out and won at the last second. That's still the wrong game. But the only thing that held 2017 back for me from being even better than it already was the injuries. Because there were just so many injuries. Joe Thomas, Odell Beckham Jr., J.J. Watt, Aaron Rodgers, they all suffered season-ending injuries, cutting the contenders list down even more. Not the Browns, though, because Joe Thomas, you know, he didn't really do that much, because the Browns went 0-16 that year. So as the year winded down, here's what the NFL landscape looked like. The Steelers, Patriots, and Eagles were the clear-cut best teams in the NFL, with the Saints, Vikings, and Rams trailing behind them. But the entire future of the season was completely changed with the outcome of just 2 games. The first being the heavyweight matchup in the NFC between the Eagles and Rams. A game between the 2 potential new faces of the league in Carson Wentz, the MVP favorite, and Todd Gurley, the Offensive Player of the Year favorite. And the game was a Greek tragedy. The Eagles won, but ended up losing Carson Wentz for the rest of the year to an ACL tear, an injury that he would never fully recover from, and all of a sudden, the Eagles, who damn near had the 1 seed locked up, were no longer considered a real threat whatsoever, with Nick Foles the backup filling in for Carson Wentz from now on. And then we got Steelers-Patriots, a game that would all but decide the number 1 seed in the AFC, and the Steelers almost stole the game. Juju Smith-Schuster made a huge play to bring Pittsburgh into the red zone, but then the famous Jesse James drop would happen. And debates still rage on today on whether or not he actually caught this ball, but I mean, if you scroll down in the comments right now, chances are you'll find some angry Yinzer typing, Jesse James caught it, in all caps. So that should tell you all you need to know. And one thing led to another. Big Harvey threw a pick because comedy, and Tom Brady and the Patriots barely escaped with their lives. So nobody really knew what was going to happen now. The playoffs felt like it was going to just be like a rock, paper, scissors thing. The Saints, Vikings, and Rams were all the favorites to make the Super Bowl now, but hey, you know, maybe Nick Foles could rekindle his 2013 form for a few games, and I know the Falcons weren't themselves, but they had Super Bowl DNA, and maybe they could get hot. And the AFC wasn't a sure thing anymore either, with the Jaguars, Patriots, and Steelers all seeming pretty evenly matched all of a sudden, and with another absurd ending to the season where the Bengals would knock out the Ravens from the playoffs on a last-second Tyler Boyd touchdown. The most unpredictable playoffs in my lifetime would begin. In the wild card, the Chiefs utterly collapsed to Marcus Mariota and the Titans, ending the Alex Smith era officially. The Falcons demolished the Rams, and Drew Brees and the Saints barely took down Cam Newton and the Panthers, which led to the divisional round. And I'm not sure we've ever seen a divisional round this good ever. Now, because the Chiefs were upset, the Patriots got thrown a softball with the Titans and handled business, and although Nick Foles looked bad in the first half versus Atlanta, the defense was able to hold on and, on a last-second stop, outlast the Falcons to move on to the NFC Championship game, despite not even being favored in their own stadium. But now we get into the real meat, starting with Steelers-Jaguars, and oh boy, was this game a doozy. This was the Steelers' best team of the entire AB Le'Veon Bell, Ben Roethlisberger era, and they blew it. Forget what the score says, because the onside kick they botched later in the game was really their only chance to even do something, because at one point, they ended up getting fisted so badly by Blake Bortles and the Jaguars, they found themselves behind 21-0, and eventually gave up their best chance at a Super Bowl and a chance with New England, losing the game 45-42. Now, enter Viking Saints, or as I like to call it, Volume 6 in the Drew Brees torture series. And despite playing an amazing second half, rallying the team back from the dead to almost steal the game, doing everything he could to just have a chance at another Super Bowl, orchestrating damn near 2 game-winning drives, it was all taken away from him. Drew Brees had to sit on the sidelines and watch Case Keenum make the most miraculous play in NFL history happen minutes later. I mean, God, this man's therapist must have seen hell. So now we find ourselves in the most bizarre timeline possible. A timeline where this picture is not fake, and the Case Keenum-Nick Foles matchup would ensue in the NFC Championship game to see which underdog would have a chance at immortality. And the game wasn't even close. Nick Foles ascended into his true form and blew the doors off of Minnesota in the second quarter alone. And all of a sudden, this team that was dead in the water after Carson Wentz's injury, who still haven't been favored in a single playoff game all year despite having home field advantage, were in the Super Bowl and awaited the winner of Patriots versus Jaguars. And despite being the heavy favorites at home, obviously, the Patriots struggled. They looked old, less athletic, less hungry, and it looked like Jacksonville was about to pull away, but no. Myles Jack's fumble return was called down by contact, and after Blake Bortles did nothing at all for 45 minutes straight, an injured Tom Brady found Chris Hogan on a game-winning drive, and now the most lopsided quarterback matchup in Super Bowl history was created. The GOAT, the MVP, Thomas Edward Patrick Brady Jr., possibly the best player in sports history, was going to be playing against Big Dick Nick Foles for the Super Bowl. This game felt like David vs. Goliath, a stereotypical shonen anime where the main character against all odds has to somehow defeat this unstoppable evil empire, a threat that has loomed over the league for decades, and without their biggest strength too. And the game that ensued was it was pure poetry, and still to this day is up there with my favorite game I've ever watched. And what made this game so special, so unique, was that Tom Brady and the Patriots played out of their minds. It's just, the Eagles were truly a team of destiny. Every time Tom Brady made something happen, Foles responded, throwing picture-perfect passes to Corey Clement and Alshon Jeffrey, while Brady and Gronk responded back with plays of their own. Back and forth, touchdown after touchdown. The game was an absolute shootout. Neither quarterback had been sacked a single time going into the fourth quarter, but for how amazing Tom Brady was, there was one symbolic sequence of plays that truly ended the game. The football gods watched from above as the Eagles slammed their meat on the table and threw a touchdown to Nick Foles on fourth down. And meanwhile, Tom Brady dropped a wide open pass in a very similar play call, and with that, the football gods knew what needed to be done. In an all-offensive game, a game in which the Patriots came in as almost a touchdown favorite, a game where Nick Foles was starting in the Super Bowl, and besides him, the Eagles' biggest threat on offense to the Patriots was their own running back from last year. The Patriots finally lost. Tom Brady was strip-sacked by Brandon Graham, and after the ball hit the ground for a final time on a Hail Mary and the clock struck 0, that was it. The Philadelphia Eagles, led by a backup quarterback, had done the impossible. In just one season, they went from irrelevant to a contender with the MVP of the league to not a threat at all, and back to Super Bowl champions against all odds, and weathered quite possibly the best game of Tom Brady's entire career to that point. And honestly, for as long as I live, I don't think I'll ever see another season like 2017 ever again. But anyways, if you like this video, then subscribe, because I got a lot of videos on the channel just like this one. And if you did like this video, watch this 2-hour documentary I just did on the Chicago Bears and all their misery. It's pretty good, trust me. But also, thanks to all my patrons for pledging $1. It truly does mean a lot. But anyways, until next time.